A very good evening to everybody watching. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Toiwan Jebela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Dr. Christian Harris. He's an academic and also a resident of the Zambezi region. He is a lecturer at the University of Namibia. Of course, he's here in his private capacity, but he's a lecturer at the University of Namibia, and his areas of interest are human rights, international law, environmental law, alternative dispute resolution, and family law. Thank you very much, Doctor, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Toivo.
Wonderful. Also, we have Uncle Ben Siyambango. He is head of the movement of the survival of the river races in Zambezia. He's a regular visitor to the show, and together today we are here to talk about the simmering views again in Zambezi region about declaring that region, some still calling it Caprivi, as an independent state. There was a demonstration recently on the 5th of June by a group of protesters aligned to the United Democratic Party, and they demonstrated expressing their view for Caprivi, as they call it, to be an independent state. Thank you, both of you, but let me start with Uncle Ben. Before we go into the geography and history of this issue, what were your thoughts when you saw what was happening in Zambezi recently?
Thank you very much. For some of us, we feel that the Constitution provides for people to demonstrate, but peacefully. And if they align themselves with that, we don't see any problem. But Comrade Yatoivo, partly what those people are trying to do is to keep the fire burning. The so-called Caprivi was part of a country that was called Zambezia. And it's still part of that country. Although administrative-wise, it has changed. But we can go into that. When I saw that, okay, we didn't see, we only saw what was happening on the television because we were not there. We thought it's a peaceful demonstration and that they have the right to do so.
Absolutely. Doc, your take on, not now on the march itself, but the content of that march. When people say that Zambezi should be declared an independent state, it should be ceded from Namibia, just as a resident of the region, and of course an academic, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind is that we have the right to freedom of speech and expression, it's allowed. However, there are limitations. If what you are expressing is contrary to what the Constitution says, then it's we are violating the law. For example, they are advocating for the the dismemberment of the country, separating the Zambezi from the rest of Namibia, which is a clear violation of Article 1 of the Namibian Constitution, which says Namibia is a unitary state founded on the principles of rule of law and democracy. So yes, you are allowed to voice your opinions, but it has limitations. So because it has political and security implications there too. So we have that thin line between freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and also what the law says.
The idea here is that to some, Caprivi, as some call it, is not at all it's not at all part of Namibia, and therefore the idea that the Namibian law must be used to sort of quash those sentiments is in itself illegal. Your thoughts?
It is part of Zambezi. It is part of Namibia. just like Walvis Bay is now part of Namibia. Unfortunately, much of our borders today were created by the colonial powers, were a product of the after effects of the 1884 Berlin Africa Conference. If we keep on going, history is important. I don't disagree with my senior here. It's very important, very much important. But our constitution is clear, and then the Zambezi, including the other 13 regions of Namibia, are recognized by the UN, the African Union, as forming a nation state. So internationally and domestically, the Zambezi is part and parcel of Namibia. There are some historical caveats attached to it, as my senior says. But the present moment, Zambezi is Namibia.
And I don't think Uncle Ben disagrees now as to the contemporary structure of things. But this idea of Zambezia as a country, because what I do not understand ever in your advocacy, Uncle Ben, is that nation states did not exist prior to colonialism, if you like. So the fact that you suggest that there was a country when countries generally did not exist, what existed, as far as I know, is tribal jurisdictions. I'm a Mafwe man. This is the Mafwe traditional jurisdiction, and that is, quote unquote, my country. And then the Subias start from the next tract of land. That is the thing. So Zambezia had who? Who were the citizens?
Zambezia is one of the oldest countries in Southern Africa. It was actually ruled by the Barotse people, followed by people from Lesotho. They came in there. In fact, Lesotho, they established their kingdom in 1830. That's when they established their kingdom. One of the first maps that were drawn in Southern Africa is about Zambezia. There it is, 1849. Long before these other countries were established. Honorable Toivo, what we, the old generation, refuse is to allow the disappearance of our country because of people who had no legal authority to do that. Zambezia, having been there, there were tribes there. There were a lot of tribes there. But the Sutus came and established that kingdom. And on top of that, a white man, in the name of Dr. David Livingstone, came to be a host. He came to live in the so-called Zambezi region today. And he stayed there for 6 years, from 1848 to 1855. That's when he even managed to name a major waterfall on the Zambezi River, Victoria Falls, after his queen. Now, if it was not a country, how could a white man reside there? And then, on top of that, this book was printed 1841. There is a country called Sebitwane, which later formed, I think, 166. So, there, Sebitwane country. That is the genesis of, but this is the genesis. But later it was named Sebitwane country.
But how was it formed? Because my difficulty, Uncle Ben, is that where a particular people lived, if the Namas lived, if the Damaras lived in the central parts of Namibia, but it was not called Namibia.
It was called, this country was called Greater Namakwaland, Damaraland.
The entire country?
The entire country.
But the country didn't exist, Uncle.
No, but they had a map.
No. The country only came to exist in its current form and shape post-colonial, not post, but after colonialism set in. In other words, these European colonial powers came here and decided to demarcate, to say, okay, from here to here, this becomes Angola now. This is Namibia now. This is Botswana now. They were not in that form. So it cannot be correct to say that Namibia existed under that name, because Namibia itself did not exist. People just lived within this area. Then the Namas lived that side, Hereros this side, or whatever. So the same logic applies then to say Zambezia. I mean, who came up with the country? Who created it? Who even elected those who led it? I mean,
Zambezia was part of Barotsland.
Yeah.
An old country established by the Aluis from DRC.
Yeah.
Zambezia was ruled by black people for the black people.
But
it doesn't mean that it's like Zambezia is one of the countries that was not colonized. It was not. In fact, there were 3 countries that were not colonized.
Yeah.
1 is Ethiopia, 2 is Liberia,
Yes.
3 is Zambezia. Because Zambezia became a sphere of influence when the Europeans came in, but the country was there, like in the days of Dr. David Livingstone.
Okay.
It was there.
Okay.
Now, the Barotse kings had ruled that country.
Okay. So let me ask Dr. Harris. You are a man of international law, and you know, for example, that the AU has a position on colonial borders.
Very much.
To say whatever is the border now, post-colonialism, must be maintained as such.
Yes.
And I think if you can tell us more about it and what you think is the thinking of the leaders who came up with that position.
Okay. In fact, under international law, it's called the doctrine of Otai Posidetis. It was advanced first in South America in order to avoid conflicts between newly independent South American states, most of whom were colonies of Spain or Portugal, and a few other colonial powers. So it was also adopted by the then Organization of African Union in order to foster peace and harmony between states, because they feared that if we revert back to our pre-colonial border, there's going to be conflict. And even though the position was adopted in the 1960s, thereafter we still had wars, because there were still countries who still believed that part of the neighboring countries, our province, belongs to us. I think the first war in which the doctrine was invoked was between Mali and Burkina Faso, in which Burkina Faso had fought with Mali, a border skirmish, because Burkina Faso claimed that the part of Mali was historically part of Burkina Faso, and then eventually the case was taken to the International Court of Justice, where it was ruled in favor of Mali, and then based on the doctrine of Otai Posidetis. Similarly, again in the 1970s, Uganda invaded Tanzania, Kagera region of Tanzania, claiming that Kagera was historically part of Uganda, and then Tanzania fought back and eventually overthrew Idi Amin. But at that time it was under Idi Amin. There are still contesting claims today regarding colonial borders. For example, before we started the program with my senior, we were discussing about how certain parts of South Africa are now, people are claiming that much of South Africa's northeastern province, where you find Mafeking, historically used to be part of Botswana. It is a fact, in fact. At one time, Botswana's capital was in another country, Mafeking. People of Lesotho are also arguing that areas around Bloemfontein are also part and parcel of historical Lesotho. And then parts of KwaZulu-Natal are also claimed by Swaziland, Eswatini. And you go further east also to the likes of Somalia. There is a part of Kenya where there is a huge Somali-speaking population. They also Somalia is also claiming that as part of Kenya. There's also another part in Ethiopia, which is also Somali. Somalia is also claiming that part of Kenya. Yeah. And they also fought the war, the Ogaden War of the 1970s. Yeah, so even though we've invoked that principle of under international law, unfortunately, wars are still taking place. Yeah. Imagine if we had not even adopted it, it would feel like I mean, to appear as if, wars would be very common then, but now it serves as a restraining mechanism for countries not to go to war to claim historical lands. Yeah. Coming back to our situation in the Namibia, particularly in the Zambezi region, we have also been impacted by the doctrine of Otai Posidetis. If you remember in the 90s, the Kaskil Island dispute, although many people had have wrongly accused our chief lawyer, then Dr. Albert Kawan, as having failed us during his during the case, as having not have done enough to secure a victory for us. But what people don't understand is that the odds were stacked against us because Botswana relied more on the colonial treaty, the Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty of 1890. Which demarcated the border between Bechuanaland, then British Bechuanaland, and German Southwest Africa. So, such the conclusion. I mean, the conclusion to that particular case was largely based on what did the British and the German agree as to where the border lie between the two countries. Yeah, we in Namibia we largely based our arguments on occupation. That the Kaskili Island was occupied by the Masovia. Yeah, but it was occupied by the Masovia. Masovia still regarded it as theirs. But unfortunately, due to that colonial border treaty, it was Botswana won the case based on that particular treaty. Yeah,
absolutely. What do you want to say, Uncle?
Very much. First of all, the Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty and the Anglo-German Treaty was not a boundary treaty. It was a sphere of influence. There's a difference between a sphere of influence and a protectorate. I think this is the major weakness of this argument. The sphere of influence, the British extended their influence up north. The Bechuanaland Protectorate, which rightly is Botswana today, its northern boundary was the 22 degrees south latitude. And that was actually ratified at the Berlin Conference, which was attended by 14 countries, including America. Okay? The boundary for German Southwest was placed at the 20th degree east of longitude, and it was never extended because at the end of World War I, Germany ceased to exist as far as Africa is concerned. They were defeated, they lost their protectorates, they also lost their influence. In fact, we are not supposed to be sitting here today if we go according to the colonial boundaries. The colonial boundary of German Southwest Africa was placed on the 20th degree east of longitude. Why? It's because a guy called Ludris, he had bought Angra Pequena from a Nama chief. And now, he was a businessman from Bremen. He bought Angra Pequena. After he bought Angra Pequena, there was a lot of thefts going on there. And those people asked the British, can you please take care of our district? By then it was a district. But because of the troubles that Otto von Bismarck experienced, he said, no, then we are declaring along the Atlantic Ocean, German Southwest. But then he later realized that it was barren because of the desert. So he asked the English, can I please extend my, and the English agreed. You can extend your boundary to the 20th degree of east longitude. I've got it here. So the colonial boundaries of, say today, Namibia, it's 20th degree east of longitude, and it was never extended. If so, can we find out who did that?
What are your thoughts on the principle that Dr. Harris spoke about, Uncle Ben, about that recognition to say, yes, colonialism, nobody invited colonialists here. They came and wreaked havoc. They redrew our boundaries. They left us in the current geographical locations that we are in. But for the sake of progress and unity for us as Africans, let's move on, because there will be skirmishes. The last time in Caprivi, the same skirmishes claimed, I think, 15 lives there because of that. So these are lived realities. It's not theories. What are your thoughts on the principle that is being advocated for in law?
We appreciate, in fact, that principle was made in 1963 by the former Organization of African Unity. Okay? Now, let's look at the whole thing. The issue of Zambezi or Zambezia was not one of those that was addressed at the Berlin Conference. It was not. That one was a British sphere of influence. Even the what you call even the strip that was given, by the way, the strip was not given to Southwest, no. It was given to the Germans who were living here to give them access to connect to their territory in Tanganyika. They did not know. You see, the British were cunning.
Yeah.
They knew about the Victoria Falls, that it's not navigable. But they agreed with the Germans to say, yes, you can send a boat up to the Indian Ocean. It's here, Article 3. In Southwest Africa, which is this one here, Germany's sphere of influence is demarcated. It's not German's protectorate.
But they were demarcated based on bilateral treaties between European powers.
Yeah, but we were not part of that.
Unfortunately, just like today, much of the international legal instruments which governs international boundaries, unfortunately, are rooted in European colonialism.
Yeah.
But we have made peace to live with them.
We have made peace. He mentioned the port of Walvis Bay.
Yeah.
The port of Walvis Bay, you know, Chief, it's only 30 kilometers from Swakopmund.
Yes.
But it was not part of this country.
Yes.
It was administered by South Africa, although the port belongs to Great Britain. When the Union of South Africa was formed or established, the British decided to give that port to South Africa for administration purposes. Now, the challenge here is the port of Walvis Bay. It is mentioned somewhere in Resolution 435 that it must be made, that the new government of Namibia must negotiate with South Africa. And I believe we were all adults here. It took 4 years, from 1990, 1991, 1994. And the man who supervised that was none other than the former president, Dr. Nangolo Mbumba.
Yeah.
He was the one assigned to supervise that. Now, that Walvis Bay was not part of this country, but it was made part of this country by a resolution. The southern Angola, which we now refer to as Ovamboland, the League of Nations issued instructions to the Union of South Africa to incorporate what we are calling Ovamboland today into former German Southwest Africa in 1926. That's how. But now, can we have a legal instrument that has allowed a place which was not in Namibia to be part of Namibia? That is the sphere of influence.
Yeah, maybe you want to say something, Doc, before we go for a break, just again on that, because for me, the issue, I mean, we could go through all these pages, and there are valid parts in these pages, but it doesn't negate the fact that right now the countries are in the shape that they are in. Because I am from the north. My tribe, the Mbaja people, it's actually probably the biggest Ovambo tribe, actually. If you put all the Ovambo tribes, the Ndongas, Kwanyamas, and everything in the Mbajas, but Mbajas happen to be predominantly inside Angola because of the way the demarcation was made. We probably have maybe 10 or 15% of Mbajas in Namibia. 85 or so live in Angola. But we have accepted it because we know that if Angola comes today and say, we want the rest of the Mbajas to come to change the border further south, so that all Mbajas become part of Angola, or vice versa. When Namibia says, all these Vambo-speaking people, including the Kwanyamas, we must redraw the border further into Angola so that they become part of Namibia. There will be bloodshed.
Obviously. There was a guy
Yeah.
in Enana who was advocating for the very thing you are talking about. He disappeared. We know that. Yes.
Okay.
Mbanjas
Yes.
were part of Angola. No argument about that.
But Angola didn't exist again.
Okay.
Because that is my difficulty.
Yeah. 1926,
Yeah.
Southern Angola was put into this country with a legal instrument. What I'm asking for, even from the doctor here, where is the legal instrument? Because as far as the books are concerned, it is saying that place was a sphere of influence. It was not part of this country. So if it was a sphere of influence, it was not part of this country. What legal instrument is there?
The 1890 Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty made the Caprivi Strip part and parcel of Namibia.
No,
and
no,
then
Doctor.
by virtue of our Constitution of 1990 also affirmed that the provisions of that legal instrument by virtue of Article 143 of the Namibian Constitution, which says all the international and domestic treaties, all the international treaties which were signed by Namibia prior to independence will be regarded as part and parcel of Namibian law, which includes Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty of 1890. So our constitution says as such. The same applies with the proclamation which reincorporated the Walvis Bay part of Namibia. As part of Namibia is also part and parcel of our amongst many instruments that our government used in order to affirm its jurisdiction over Walvis Bay.
The route we should go, every case has got a case history.
Yeah.
Before you appear before a doctor, they always want to know, what is your history? You see, it's clear here. It's understood that under this arrangement, Germany shall be granted free access from its protectorate to the Zambezi by means of a strip of land not less than 20 English miles wide at any point. It was given to the
But
Germans.
such provision was contained in that particular treaty,
No,
so it has legal backing, my senior.
No, the treaty is here. This is the treaty.
Let's go for a very, very quick break. The conversation is getting interesting. We'll be back in a moment.
Thank you.
Slow internet should be a headache of the past, yet many Namibians have connections that just aren't fast. We have a solution that might set you free. It's called Mobile LTE, and it comes with real speed. You'll enjoy up to 50 megabytes per second from just $300 Namibian a month and free internet browsing after midnight till 6. When it comes to staying connected, this is it. Visit Paratus.Africa/Namibia or our branches nationwide and experience the thrill of better internet with Paratus by your side.
Always prepared, Paratus.
We continue the very exciting history lessons and law lessons that we are learning from Dr. Harris and Uncle Ben Siyambango on the agenda. You were making a point, Uncle. I want to understand first also, this pile of documents, who are the authors? Are they... something just...
This one was written by Dr. David Livingstone,
Yeah.
1841 to 1856.
Yeah.
This one was written by somebody who was living in Botswana around 1935.
Yeah.
This one, John Mackenzie, is an Englishman.
Yeah.
This one, apparently, was even written by a lecturer here in Namibia, 1990.
And these assertions cannot be challenged.
I don't know how they can be challenged. I don't know. This one was written by, it was written, I think, 1960. It's a British guy who wrote this.
Okay. Doc, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, one thing I like, I'm also a very big fan of history. I love history. Yeah, but one thing I like about history is that history is an evolving subject from time to time. What we might think is correct in 1845, in 1890 it might be discredited based on the availability of new evidence. There's no doubt, I'm not disputing his assertions. He did his homework and is advancing his historical narrative. That's the beauty of academic disputations. Yeah, contrary to what he has said, I've also read much about the history of my region and how it became part and parcel of Namibia, which I think it should remain so. There are many competing claims of who originally wrote the so-called Caprivi Strip. He rightly said the Barosland also took claim. They claimed the entire strip as part of their Greater Barosland. Greater Barosland, even today, there's two advocates there. The secessionist movement in Western Zambia is too much stronger, whereas on our part it's largely fizzled because it lacks support. So the Greater Barosland project, I think, for them, if you interview them, if you do their own research, they claim that much of western province of Zambia, Namibia's Caprivi Strip or Zambezi Region, Chove district of Botswana, and the Victoria Falls of Zimbabwe are historically part of the so-called Greater Barosland. That's a claim. There's also another competing claim. I think my senior can also acknowledge it. The Batawana tribe of Botswana also claim the entire Caprivi Strip as historically theirs. They've even raised issues in the past when we were still under South African occupation. They claim that the entire strip, especially more so, I think if I'm not mistaken, Masuvia-speaking areas of the Zambezi region were part of the Batawana kingdom. Yei and Masuvia-speaking areas. Most people are not aware of the fact that the history of Zambezi is so complex. Although it was still regarded as part of German Southwest Africa, the later part of South Africa, but it was still administered partially in Botswana, at Kasane and also at Maun, and for a brief period of time, just across the border in Zambia. So there have been competing claims. So whether Zambezi existed or not, I mean, it's for historians to come up with evidence.
But that is exactly my difficulty. Because again, we can go back into history, back and forth, where were the original boundaries, who came, who claimed what part, and who ruled over who. That is in the past, whether it's now proven to be true or not. My difficulty, Uncle Ben, is the current dispensation. If the movement of people who are calling for this independence of Zambezia were saying, look, we were originally Zambian, for argument's sake, we were originally Zambian and we want to revert back to Zambia. Maybe because the Namibian government doesn't treat us well, or because, for example, when you look at the situation in Eastern DRC, the Banyamulenge, those people, they are Rwandese originally, if you want, if even Rwanda existed as a country, but the tribal jurisdiction was cut into half or so, and then some of them became part of DRC. And for many years, the Congolese leaders like Mobutu Sese Seko's, if I'm not mistaken, have always mistreated these people as foreigners, because they say, even the language that they speak is not a Congolese language. These are Rwandese people. So they've been told they must go. The militias were sent there to sort of uproot them and send them back. But they are saying, look, this is forget the border for now. This is our tribal land. We were born here. So the conflicts, and these conflicts are so bloody. Even in this, what is the end game here? What is it that you, assuming it happens?
The end game here is, Dr. Taivo, what were the reasons behind the liberation struggle for Namibia? Namibia was ruled, or Southwest, was ruled for 90 years. That's not a small figure. Why didn't we just accept to say, okay, because South Africa has been ruling us for such a long period, so let's be part of South Africa. Why didn't we accept that?
I don't think the comparison is
the
same.
We are not comparing apple to apple.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, because the reason is because Southwest was a country on its own, compared to South Africa. The same applies here. The country we are now saying was not there. It was there, Zambezia. And then the strip was given to the Germans who were here to travel to Tanganyika. It was not made part of Southwest Africa, geographically, no. What we want is the instrument that says the Caprivi Strip now becomes part of Southwest Africa. Even the Act number 34 of granting independence, this one, it says, whereas the Council of the League of Nations on 17th December 1920 conferred upon His Britannic Majesty for and on behalf of the government of the Union of South Africa a mandate over the territory which formally constituted the Protectorate of Southwest Africa.
Yeah.
This is an act. Now, which territory constituted the former? We can only be guided by the map.
Yeah.
We can only be guided by the map. Doctor is here. This was the German Southwest. Where is the Caprivi here? Where?
But,
you show me.
but Uncle Ben, this is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To say, who drew up all these things?
Because,
because somebody could just say, history is written by the victors. What do they say?
That's true. That's true. But this was drawn by the Germans themselves. And then, on top of that, the Germans themselves are saying Caprivi Strip is... In fact, they should not even call it Caprivi Strip.
Yeah.
They should call it the additional strip of Southwest Africa. That's what it is. Because that strip belonged to the British sphere of influence, which was declared between 1885 and 1887.
My senior, throughout history, territories have exchanged hands between different countries. One moment, one part of, I can give an example in Europe. There's a province called Alsace and Lorraine in France.
Yes.
For centuries, it changed hands depending on who wins during the battles between the wars between France and Germany.
It's true.
So the same analogy can be made to the previous trip.
But that is after. There are so many ways of acquiring a new territory. Either by conquest, prescription,
discovery.
Yeah.
Okay? None of that applies to Zambezia. None of that. And it's not only Namibia, it's also Botswana, Bechuanaland Protectorate.
Yeah.
Their map is here. This is Bechuanaland Protectorate. Their northern boundary is the 22 degrees south latitude. And that was ratified at the Berlin Conference, 1884. Now this is where you get the Caprivi. Now people are calling this the Caprivi Strip. Actually, there is no such a name called Caprivi Strip. It's a lie.
Okay. So let me again. I want us to get into the future. In which way is the current state of things disadvantages that strip and the people who live there? Is it? Are you calling for the independence of that state, of that part of the country, because there are particular things that you are enduring as the people of that region?
No.
Or is it just a fancy
No, sir.
advocacy?
What we don't want our country, Zambezia, to be razed off the map of Africa by people who had no legal authority to do it. Because a sphere of influence means you do not have jurisdiction in that area, you do not have a protectorate in that area. So whoever made this arrangement, who is it? I can only suspect it's Great Britain. We don't want our country to disappear completely. We were not part and parcel of former German Southwest. We were not.
Master, if I may ask you a question now.
Yes.
What are the current borders of Zambezia? Is it only the previous strip, or does it extend to other neighboring countries?
It is that's a good question. The Zambezia, okay, let's look at it. The colonial boundary, the eastern colonial boundary of German Southwest, according to this map, it's the 20th degree east of longitude. That is the western boundary. The colonial boundary of Bechuanaland, former Bechuanaland Protectorate, is the 20th degree of east longitude. Where is that? It's supposed to be here. It's here.
Yeah.
It's the 20th degree of east longitude. This one here.
So do you then?
We have a country.
Yeah. So assuming for some miraculous reason your wish was granted, are you going now to confine yourself to the current structure, or are you going to expand and to go to other countries and say we want back?
We are looking for the restitution of Zambezia,
As it were.
as it were.
And what happens to the rest of the country? Because a precedent would have been set. Okay. Then suddenly, your people in that part of the country say, "Look, we are out of here, out of Namibia. Goodbye, Namibia." Then somewhere in Kunene, people say, "No, we also." I mean, and
No, Kunene.
What will be the end?
No.
Kunene is just an example.
Kunene and the Ovamboland, right now, they are rightly in as part and a parcel of Namibia, because there's a legal instrument which was issued by the League of Nations to make that part of this country. So, like let's say, by the way, when you talk about Ovamboland, Kwanyamas are not Ovambos.
Kwanyamas are not
No,
Ovambos.
they are not Ovambos. It's Kwanyama Kafima. They are not Ovambos. There were only 4 registered Ovambo tribes, 4 of them.
Registered by who? You see, this is
By the
problem.
Europeans.
But that is a problem, Uncle Ben, because in one moment you want to respect what the Europeans did, and then in another moment you say no. Sorry for my choice of word, but to hell with what the Europeans did to us. So where do we strike the balance?
Okay, no. What we are saying is we are looking for the application of law. The application of law, like my land friend here, it says there must be a legal instrument which authorizes certain things to happen. In our
The good
case,
doctor cited some. Of course, I mean, Doc, you spoke about something that happened before independence, and then that was also affirmed by our independence. You said something to the effect that there's a principle that whatever was sort of the treaty then gets absorbed into our law and becomes part of
Article 143.
yeah.
But the laws of Namibia were only extended by that Act number 10 of 1999. for the laws of this country to apply that side. It's there. Okay? So 1999. That's...
Yeah.
Yeah. No, really. So if that is the case,
Yeah.
why pass such a law if indeed what the landman is saying, to say, and by the way, treaties must be properly treaties must be properly understood. This treaty that Namibia is saying, this one, the Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty, this one, it had nothing to do with the boundaries. Nothing.
Indeed.
Nothing to do with boundaries.
Martin, I would advise you to read the judgment of the Kasikili Sedudu Island case.
Kasikili Island, that's
you
why
will get to understand the importance of these colonial era treaties.
So what has happened to the colonial boundary of 22 degrees south latitude? What has happened to it?
You tell me.
Yeah, it's still applicable. The treaty that was made at the Berlin Conference is still applicable even today.
My senior, you are sorry to say you are fighting a losing battle because as it stands now, all international legal instruments, both under the AU and under the UN auspices, affirm Namibia's territorial borders, which includes the Walvis Bay and the former Caprivi Strip.
No, but
historically, it's important. We can talk about Zambezia if it existed. We can talk about Greater Roseland for the good of history, for our memories, in order to pass it to our generations. But the current circumstances do not favor an independent Caprivi.
No.
Legally, politically, economically, it's impossible.
No, we are not talking about Caprivi.
Okay, Zambezia.
We are talking about Zambezia. That's what we are talking about. You see, this strip was given for a purpose, right? It was not just a gift for the sake of a gift. No. The purpose was to enable the Germans who are here to travel to the Zambezi River. Now, what is the purpose of Namibia being on the banks of the Zambezi River? What is the purpose? There's no purpose.
Because that's history. History will always be complicated. But going back to what he said, I think you raised a very important point when you say, in the event that, which is in a highly unlikely event, that Namibia says, Zambezi, Caprivi, Zambezia, you are on your own. You know, the implication there too are very dangerous to the country because it sets a bad precedent. If you were to say, okay, Caprivians, you are out. And then as he said, maybe the Overhero will say, okay, the government is not taking our case seriously with regard to reparations. We want independence. Yeah. The South have already complained that they always say that we are marginalized. Their politicians are on record saying the South, minerals from the South are used to develop the North. They always say it from time to time. What becomes of a country?
No, the country remains Namibia, which is former German Southwest Africa. This is the country. Anyone who is here, Mbanja who is here, cannot say, no, we want to be on our own. It's impossible. That is secessionism.
But how do you want Zambezia to be a country?
No, Zambezia it was a country on its own.
So do you advocate for secessionism?
No, it's not a secessionism. By the way, the way...
But if you want a country on your own, separate from Namibia, that's a secessionism.
No, it's not secessionism. The word secessionism was invented in 1865 when the two Americans were at loggerheads. Secessionism means you were part of that country historically. And now you are saying, because you want to retain some slaves, you don't want to be part of the Northern America. That's when that word applies. But in this case, it does not apply.
But under the current international legal framework, if one territory decides to separate from the motherland, the mother country, that's secessionism.
No.
Under various international treaties, there's always that distinction. Most people confuse secessionism and self-determination. They are related but two distinct concepts. I've read, I've studied, I've spent much of my time. Oh, not much of my time. Once in a while I read more about the secessionist demand for Caprivi independence. Some of them say they want self-determination. Some say they want secessionism. Some confuse the two terms. They're not the same. Namibia, as it stands, grants some form of internal self-determination. We have it in Namibia through the Traditional Authorities Act. Our chiefs have got the right, quite a number of, quite robust powers to adjudicate on issues of land and other incidental matters there too. So that's internal self-determination. So the government allows it. But secessionism is the one which the government prohibits by virtue of Article 1 of the Namibian Constitution. So, my senior, when you say you want your country to exist, but how are you going to go about constituting it again? You have to separate from the motherland, because Namibia claims Zambezi as part and parcel of its territory as part of the 824,000 square miles that makes up our country. Namibia will not accept that because it's a violation of Article 1 of the Namibian Constitution. No. It might have been, based on your own research, a country on its own, but the current circumstances makes it part and parcel of Namibia. And such, it is also affirmed by the UN, African Union, and its neighboring countries. Coming back to, again, to our domestic legal order, okay? It's not the first time that people have tried to secede from Namibia. The Rehoboth pastors attempted. There were some within the authority, the group wanted independence right away from Namibia. Others wanted limited autonomy. They sat down and it was discussed, and then eventually their captain agreed that the Rehoboth shall remain part of Namibia.
It's part of Namibia.
It is part of Namibia. The same applies. Yes. But the Rehobothers who wanted independence also used colonial terms and the colonial treaties that they had with the Germans, which gave them a special autonomy within Namibia and so on. The same can be said about the Heligoland Zanzibar Treaty of 1890, which made the Zambezi Capristi part and parcel of German Southwest Africa.
No, it did not make it part and parcel of German Southwest Africa.
But that's what the treaty says. Terrible as the treaty is, my senior.
No. Please, let's help the people of Namibia. This is the treaty. There is nothing here which makes here Article 3 of the, Article 3. There is nothing here which says we are making this. In fact, as I say, there's no name such as Caprivi. The true name, the true identity of that area is what? Is the additional strip of Southwest Africa. And there is nowhere where you find that as being made part and a parcel of German Southwest Africa.
The same treaty that you indicate did not also specifically state that Windhoek is part of Namibia.
But the people,
because
even you know what? From here to Cape Town is 1,300 kilometers. No, 1,250 kilometers. From here, Windhoek, to Ngwezi, it's 1,250 kilometers. How can they be in the same country?
The USA is huge.
No.
The USA is also a huge country. From New York to New York, Los Angeles is about 3,000 kilometers to one country.
No, please. Do we accept that there was a country called Zambezia? Do we accept that?
I personally do not, because
you don't accept that.
No, because countries, again, Uncle Ben, countries did not. What existed pre-colonialism was just jurisdictions.
Okay.
So, it's tribal jurisdictions. By the way, it was not like the Mafwes and Subias, for argument's sake, live together in something called a country. No. People lived just within tribal jurisdictions, and then nation states, as we came to know, because Zambezia that you are conceptualizing is a nation state, and nation states did not exist pre-colonialism.
In fact, the very concept of what constitutes a state today was a European creation during the Treaty of Westphalia in the 16th century.
Yes.
That's what constitutes the modern state, what we call as Namibia, France, and so on. Yeah, when Europe decided to end feudalism and create states during that particular treaty. And from the spirit of the Treaty of Westphalia, that's European powers crafted their colonial sphere of influence along the lines of the Treaty of Westphalia. That's what it is. But as he's rightly saying, as I'm rightly saying, there wasn't such a thing as Zambezia. There were tribal kingdoms. In Namibia, the biggest one, based on history, was the Ondonga Kingdom. And I think even the Ndongas themselves today, I think they always claim that it extended beyond the current border. I think it went up to beyond Rootfontein area and so on. But that one is something which is there. Yeah. But as for Zambezia, I don't know. I still need to be convinced.
Then no, you can still need to be convinced. But this was the state that was established on the 15th of November, 1884. This one.
Yeah,
okay?
by people who came to Africa and just out of their own decided these things.
Yeah.
And but now, me as a Namibian, I am forced somehow to accept that this is okay.
Yes.
But Uncle Ben says no.
No.
For Zambezia, no.
No,
the conversation changes.
No, this I accept. This is what is even mentioned in the whatever. Yeah. You know what? There's been a lot of half-baked stories.
We've run out of time.
Thank you, sir.
But
frankly speaking, Zambezia was there. Okay. The maps are there. Everything is there. Okay. So we cannot today, because we are sitting in Namibia, we can deny the existence of Zambezia. No, we shouldn't. It was a country. In fact, there were 5 countries. Yeah. My last statement. There was one in Southern Africa, between the Cape of Good Hope and the south of the Zambezi River. There was South Africa. There was German Southwest. There was Bechuanaland. There was Portuguese East Africa, and then Zambezia. 5 countries. So we cannot deny it simply because either we don't know it or we deliberately don't want to know it because today we are comfortable. Uncle,
thank you. Thank you very much for coming to the show. Doc, thank you. Yeah. Our conversation ends here. I wish we could speak longer, but that is a time that we had. It's a very interesting conversation. I think Namibians need to have a conversations among themselves, peaceful conversations, and that is what we advocate for, to enrich the understanding of those that are watching. Thank you for watching.